My name is Rudy Thompson, and I just turned 68 years old. Last week at my birthday party in my son's living room in Denver, something happened that I'll never forget. Marcus, my boy, stood up in front of all our guests and handed me a brochure for Sunset Manor Nursing Home. Everyone went quiet, waiting for me to break down and cry, but instead I smiled. A real, genuine smile that confused the hell out of everyone in that room. You see, what Marcus didn't know was that I'd been planning something for the past 2 months. Something that would change everything. Before I tell you about the decision that turned my life upside down in the best possible way, where are you watching from today? Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your strength after 60. Now let me take you back 3 months to show you how I got to that moment. It all started 2 years ago when my beloved wife Margaret passed away from cancer. After 42 years of marriage, I was lost. The house we'd built together in Littleton felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories. That's when Marcus called me up one evening in March. "Dad, why don't you come stay with us for a while? Jessica and I have been talking, and we think it'd be good for all of us. Tommy would love having his grandpa around more." The invitation felt like a lifeline. Marcus had a beautiful 2-story house in the suburbs of Denver, complete with a white picket fence and a yard where my 8-year-old grandson Tommy could play. When I pulled up that first day with my suitcases and a few boxes of Margaret's things, Jessica greeted me at the front door with a warm hug and fresh-baked cookies. Those first few weeks were magical. I'd wake up early and make pancakes for Tommy before school. Jessica, who worked as a nurse at Denver General, would chat with me over coffee about her patients and how rewarding her job was. Marcus, busy with his insurance sales job, would come home energized, and we'd spend evenings watching baseball games together just like when he was a kid. I helped around the house without being asked, fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, painted the fence that had been weathered by last winter's storms, and even planted a small vegetable garden in the backyard. Tommy was thrilled to help me with the tomatoes and peppers, getting his little hands dirty and asking a million questions about how plants grow. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt useful again. I felt wanted. Jessica would brag to her friends about how helpful I was, and Marcus seemed genuinely happy to have me there. We'd have family dinners every night at 6 sharp, and I'd tell Tommy stories about his father's childhood that made everyone laugh until our sides hurt. But as spring turned into summer, something started to shift. It was subtle at first, like clouds gathering on a distant horizon. Marcus began working longer hours, claiming he needed to build up his client base. Jessica picked up extra shifts at the hospital. Our family dinners became less frequent, replaced by quick meals grabbed between their busy schedules. The first real sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in late June. I'd woken up early as usual and turned on my old transistor radio while making coffee. The morning news was followed by some classic country music, and I guess I had it louder than usual. Jessica came stomping down the stairs in her scrubs, her hair still messy from sleep. "Rudy, for crying out loud, I just got off a 12-hour shift 3 hours ago. Some of us need to sleep during the day." Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before, sharp and cutting. She yanked the radio cord from the wall with more force than necessary. I apologized immediately, but the damage was done. The easy warmth we'd shared was replaced by something colder, more careful. From that day forward, I found myself tiptoeing around the house, constantly aware of every sound I made. The television volume stayed low. My footsteps became softer, and I even stopped humming while I worked in the garden. Marcus started assigning me household chores, but not in the collaborative way we'd been doing things. Instead, he'd leave little notes on the kitchen counter. "Dad, can you vacuum the living room today? Or the dishes from last night are still in the sink." The notes felt different from asking for help. They felt like orders, like I was expected to earn my keep. The worst part was Jessica's comments. They started small little digs that could almost be mistaken for jokes. "At least in a nursing home you'd have people your own age to talk to," she'd say when I tried to join their conversations about work. Or, "I bet you miss having your own space, don't you, Rudy?" One evening in July, I was looking for a recipe on their computer when I accidentally saw Jessica's browsing history. Page after page of nursing home websites, comparison charts of different facilities, and even a bookmarked page titled "How to Talk to Elderly Parents About Assisted Living." My stomach dropped like a stone. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction from the past month. The way Marcus's smile seemed forced when he'd get home from work. How Jessica would suddenly stop talking when I entered a room. The way they'd exchange glances when they thought I wasn't looking. I wasn't just imagining things. I was becoming unwelcome in my own son's home. The conversation I'd been dreading came 2 weeks later. Marcus knocked on my bedroom door after Tommy had gone to bed. "Dad, can we talk?" He sat on the edge of my bed, running his hands through his hair, the way he'd done since he was little when something was bothering him. "Dad, I know this situation has been an adjustment for everyone. Jessica's been really stressed at work, and having another person in the house, well, it's just a lot. We love you, Dad, we do, but Jessica needs her space to decompress when she gets home from those long shifts. And Tommy, well, he's getting confused about house rules when there are 3 adults giving him guidance." I listened without interrupting, even though every word felt like a small betrayal. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike and throw a curveball. The young man I'd helped through college and walked down the aisle at his wedding. Now he was telling me I was too much for his family to handle. "What are you saying, Marcus?" I asked, though I already knew. "I'm saying maybe we should look at some alternatives. Some places where you could be around people your own age with activities and care if you need it. Just to consider, Dad, just to look." That night after Marcus left my room, I made a decision. If they wanted me out of their lives, I'd leave, but I'd do it on my own terms, in my own way, and in my own time. I was 68 years old, not dead, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let anyone make me feel like a burden ever again. The next morning, I started taking long walks through the neighborhood. At first, it was just to get out of the house and give Jessica the space she apparently needed, but those walks became something more important. They became my escape and my research. 3 blocks from Marcus's house, there was a small park with a pond where ducks liked to gather. That's where I met Walter, a 72-year-old man who showed up every morning with a bag of breadcrumbs and a thermos of coffee. Walter had been divorced for 5 years and lived in a 1-bedroom apartment downtown. "Best thing that ever happened to me," he told me one morning as we watched the ducks fight over bread pieces. "I spent 40 years letting other people tell me how to live. Now I wake up when I want, eat what I want, watch whatever I want on TV. Freedom is the greatest gift of getting older if you're brave enough to take it." Walter's words stuck with me. Freedom. When was the last time I'd felt truly free? Even in my marriage with Margaret, as wonderful as it was, there were compromises and schedules and considerations for another person's needs. Now, living with Marcus and Jessica, I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells. During one of our conversations, Walter mentioned a place called Golden Years Community in Lakewood. "It's not what you think," he said when he saw my expression. "These aren't nursing homes where they warehouse old people. These are communities for active adults who want independence with a little support when they need it." That afternoon, I drove the 20 minutes to Lakewood to check it out for myself. Golden Years Community was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of a sterile institutional building, I found a collection of modern apartment buildings arranged around a central community center with walking paths, gardens, and even a small golf course. Janet Morrison, the community manager, was a vibrant 65-year-old woman with silver hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She gave me a tour that opened my eyes to possibilities I'd never considered. Each apartment was a complete living space, with a full kitchen, living room, bedroom, and bathroom. Residents had their own front doors, their own mailboxes, their own lives. "We have book clubs, cooking classes, dance lessons, and game nights," Janet explained as we walked through the community center. "There's a fitness center, a library, and organized trips to museums, theaters, and even weekend getaways to places like Santa Fe or the Grand Canyon. Our residents don't sit around waiting to die. They're living." I watched residents coming and going. Some were heading to what looked like a cooking class, others to a room where I could hear music and laughter. These people looked happy, engaged, purposeful. They looked free. The apartment Janet showed me was on the 2nd floor with a balcony overlooking the gardens. It had modern appliances, plenty of storage, and large windows that let in natural light. For the first time in months, I could picture myself somewhere besides Marcus's guest bedroom. "What does something like this cost?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Janet walked me through the financial details. With my Social Security, Margaret's life insurance, and the money from selling our house, I could not only afford it, but live comfortably. The community fee covered maintenance, utilities, and access to all activities and services. There was even an on-site medical clinic for routine checkups and minor emergencies. As I drove back to Marcus's house that evening, my mind was racing with possibilities. I could have my own space again. I could make my own choices about when to wake up, what to eat, what to watch on television. I could join clubs and make friends and maybe even travel. I could stop being a burden and start being myself again. That night, I called the community and put down a deposit on the apartment. My move-in date was set for 2 months away, which would be right around my birthday. Perfect timing, I thought. A new beginning to celebrate another year of life. Over the next 8 weeks, I began preparing for my departure with the precision of a military operation. The key was doing everything quietly without arousing suspicion. Marcus and Jessica had become so comfortable with their daily routines of avoiding me that they didn't notice my increased independence. I started by getting my finances in order. I met with my banker, Robert Chen, who helped me transfer funds and set up automatic payments for my new apartment. Margaret's life insurance policy, which I'd barely touched since her death, would provide a substantial cushion for my new life. I also quietly sold my old Buick to a used car dealer and bought a newer, smaller Honda Civic that would be easier to manage. The hardest part was deciding what to take with me and what to leave behind. I couldn't take all of Margaret's things, but I carefully selected photo albums, her jewelry box, and a quilt she'd made during her last year. These items, along with my clothes books and a few pieces of furniture from our old house that Marcus had stored in his basement, would be enough to make my new place feel like home. I arranged for a moving company to come on my birthday, while Marcus and Jessica would be busy with the party preparations. I paid extra for them to pack and move everything quickly. The timing would be perfect for my grand revelation. During this planning phase, I also began preparing emotionally for the confrontation I knew was coming. I wrote several drafts of a letter explaining my decision, but eventually decided that a face-to-face conversation would be more honest. I practiced what I would say, how I would remain calm and dignified no matter what their reaction was. The relationship between Marcus, Jessica, and me continued to deteriorate as my birthday approached. Jessica had stopped making any effort to include me in conversations. Marcus spoke to me only when necessary, and even then his tone was strained and impatient. They'd started having whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered a room. Tommy, bless his heart, was the only bright spot during those final weeks. He'd still come to me with scraped knees and stories about school. But I could see that he was confused by the tension in the house. He'd ask me questions like, "Why doesn't Daddy smile anymore?" and "Are you sad, Grandpa?" Kids always know when something isn't right, even when the adults pretend everything is fine. 2 weeks before my birthday, I overheard Marcus on the phone with someone clearly discussing nursing home options. "Yes, we've looked at your brochures online. We'd like to schedule a tour for after his birthday. We want to present this to him gently, but we've made our decision." Hearing those words, "we've made our decision," crystallized everything for me. They weren't planning to discuss options with me or ask what I wanted. They were planning to tell me what was going to happen to my life. That phone call removed any lingering doubts I had about my secret plan. The night before my birthday, I packed the last of my personal items into boxes and hid them in the closet. I laid out the clothes I'd wear to my party clothes that I'd also wear to my new home. I fell asleep that night feeling more excited than I'd been in years. Tomorrow, I was going to take control of my life again. My 68th birthday dawned bright and clear, a perfect Colorado summer day. I woke up early as usual and made coffee while Marcus and Jessica were still sleeping. For the last time, I sat in their kitchen and watched the sunrise through the window. In a few hours, everything would change. Marcus came downstairs first, dressed in khakis and a polo shirt that Jessica had clearly chosen for him. "Morning, Dad. Happy birthday," he said, but his smile looked rehearsed. "Big day today." He had no idea how right he was. Jessica appeared a few minutes later, already bustling around the kitchen and checking items off a list. She'd planned the party with military precision, and I had to admire her efficiency, even if her motivation was questionable. "The caterer will be here at 1, guests arrive at 2, and we'll do the presentation around 3:30, she said to Marcus, not looking at me. I spent the morning helping with final preparations, playing with Tommy, and watching the clock. At 12:30, I excused myself to take a shower and change clothes. While upstairs, I opened my bedroom window, slightly ready for the moving truck that would arrive soon. The guests began arriving right on schedule. Marcus's sister Helen and her husband drove up from Colorado Springs. A few of Marcus's co-workers came with their wives, along with Jessica's nursing friends and some neighbors from the street. Tommy's excitement was infectious as he helped greet everyone and showed off his new bicycle to anyone who would look. The party was pleasant enough on the surface. People complimented Jessica on the food, talked about work and weather, and told stories about Tommy's latest adventures. but I could feel the undercurrent of tension. Helen kept shooting worried glances at Marcus. Jessica's smile was brittle and forced. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something to happen. Around 3 o'clock, I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs. From my bedroom window, I could see the moving truck parked around the corner exactly as planned. The movers were waiting for my signal. Everything was in place. When I came back downstairs, Marcus was standing by the fireplace with a manila envelope in his hands. His face was pale, and Jessica stood beside him like a soldier preparing for battle. The room had grown quiet, and all eyes were on the three of us. "Dad," Marcus began, his voice shaky. Jessica and I, we have something we need to discuss with you. We know this might come as a surprise, but we've been doing some research and we think—" He stopped, took a deep breath, and pulled a glossy brochure from the envelope. On the front was a photo of smiling elderly people playing cards under the title "Sunset Manor, Where Care Meets Comfort." The room was dead silent. I could hear Tommy playing in the backyard, blissfully unaware that his family was imploding. Helen gasped softly. One of the neighbors shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "We think this place would be perfect for you, Dad. They have activities and medical care, and you'd be around people your own age. We've already called and scheduled a tour for next week." Marcus's words came out in a rush, like he was afraid he'd lose his nerve if he slowed down. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for tears, anger, or some kind of breakdown. Jessica had her arms crossed, her jaw set with determination. Marcus looked like he might throw up. That's when I smiled. A real, genuine, ear-to-ear smile that seemed to confuse everyone in the room. I stood up slowly, accepting the brochure from Marcus's trembling hand. The room was so quiet, I could hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Tommy had stopped playing outside, and even the neighborhood seemed to be holding its breath. "Thank you, son," I said calmly, looking at the brochure with genuine interest. "This is very thoughtful of you, but as it happens, I've already made other arrangements." The confusion on Marcus's face was almost comical. "What do you mean, Dad? What arrangements?" "I mean that tomorrow morning I'll be moving into my own apartment at Golden Years Community in Lakewood. Everything's been arranged for the past 2 months. The paperwork is signed, the deposit is paid. And as a matter of fact," I walked to the front window and pointed to the moving truck that was now pulling up to the curb. "My movers are here right now." If the room had been quiet before now, it was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Marcus's mouth fell open like a fish gasping for air. Jessica went completely white. Helen started laughing, a sound of disbelief and admiration mixed together. "You... what?" Marcus stammered. "Dad, what are you talking about? You can't just... when did you... how did you..." I walked to the front door and waved to the moving crew. "Gentlemen, perfect timing. We're ready for you." I turned back to the room full of stunned faces. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to the party, but I have a new home to get to." The next few minutes were chaos. The movers came through the front door with boxes and dollies. Marcus was following me around, demanding explanations that I wasn't ready to give. Jessica stood frozen in the living room, watching her carefully planned intervention fall apart in real time. "Dad, you can't be serious about this. You can't just leave like this. We're your family." Marcus's voice was getting higher and more desperate. "Marcus," I said, stopping in the middle of the living room while movers carried my belongings around us. "Let me ask you something. When you decided I needed to move out, did you ask me what I wanted? Did you consider that I might have preferences about where I'd like to live? Did you think for 1 second that I might want to have a say in my own life?" He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. "I'm 68 years old, son, not dead. I have money, I have my health, I have my mind. I don't need to be managed or handled or taken care of like a child. I need to be respected, and since that respect wasn't coming from this house, I found it somewhere else." Jessica finally found her voice. "But Rudy, we were trying to do what's best for you. We thought—" "No, Jessica," I interrupted gently but firmly. "You were trying to do what's most convenient for you. There's a difference, and I don't blame you for that. This arrangement wasn't working for any of us. But instead of talking to me like an adult, you decided to ship me off to a place I'd never seen, to live among strangers I'd never met." The movers were making quick work of my belongings. I'd been smart to pack light. Within 30 minutes, everything I owned was loaded into their truck. I walked over to Tommy, who had come inside and was watching the chaos with wide, confused eyes. "Come here, buddy," I said, kneeling down to his level. Grandpa's going to live in a new place now, but it doesn't mean I'm leaving you. It means I'm going somewhere where I can be happy again. And when you come visit me, we can do fun things like swimming and playing games with other kids whose grandparents live there too." "Are you mad at Daddy and Mommy?" he asked with the brutal honesty that only children possess. "No, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that hurt each other's feelings, but it doesn't mean we stop loving each other. Your daddy is my son, and I'll always love him. We just need to learn how to be a family in a different way." I stood up and looked around the room at the faces of people who had watched me be humiliated and had then witnessed my triumph. Some looked embarrassed, others impressed, and a few seemed to be fighting back laughter. "Marcus," I said, walking over to my son, "I love you. You're my boy, and nothing will ever change that. But I also love myself enough to refuse to be treated like a burden. When you're ready to have a relationship with me that's based on respect instead of obligation, you know where to find me." I hugged him, feeling his shoulders shake slightly. Whether from anger, sadness, or relief, I couldn't tell. "And Jessica," I continued, "I hope you find the peace and space you've been looking for. I genuinely mean that. You work hard, and you deserve to come home to a place that feels like yours." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes, though I suspected they were more from shock than sadness. I grabbed my jacket and the small suitcase with my immediate essentials. "Thank you all for coming to my birthday party. I'm sorry for the unexpected entertainment, but I promise you'll have a story to tell for years to come." As I walked toward the door, Helen caught my arm. "Rudy Thompson, you magnificent bastard," she whispered. "I haven't seen a move like that since Dad stood up to Mom about moving to Florida. You've got bigger balls than my brother ever did." With that ringing endorsement, I walked out of Marcus's house as a free man. The drive to Golden Years Community took 25 minutes, and with every mile I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The movers followed behind me, and when we pulled up to my new building, Janet Morrison was waiting with a welcome committee of residents who had volunteered to help me move in. "Welcome home, Rudy," Janet called out as I got out of my car. "How was your birthday party?" "Eventful," I replied with a grin. "Very eventful." The next few hours were a whirlwind of unpacking, organizing, and meeting my new neighbors. Sarah Whitman from apartment 2B brought homemade cookies and stayed to help me arrange furniture. George Patterson from across the hall offered to help me figure out the cable television system. Mary and Frank Rodriguez invited me to join their bridge group that met every Thursday evening. By evening, my apartment felt like home. Margaret's photos were on the mantel, her quilt was on my bed, and I was sitting in my own living room for the first time in 2 years. The silence was golden, broken only by the sounds I chose to make. That first week flew by in a blur of new experiences. I signed up for the cooking class and learned to make proper Italian sauce from Maria Gonzalez, whose husband had been a chef before he passed away. I joined the morning walking group and discovered muscles I'd forgotten I had. I attended the Monday night movie club and argued passionately with other residents about whether Casablanca was better than the Maltese Falcon. Most surprisingly, I found myself drawn to Sarah Whitman. She was 63, a retired teacher whose husband had died 3 years earlier. She had grown children in California who visited occasionally, but like me, she'd chosen independence over dependence. We started having coffee together in the community center cafe, then progressed to taking evening walks around the grounds. "I was married for 38 years, she told me one evening as we sat on a bench watching the sunset. "I loved my husband dearly, but I'd forgotten who I was outside of being his wife. Living here has given me the chance to rediscover Sarah, not just Bill's wife or Jenny and Mike's mom. Does that make sense?" It made perfect sense. For the first time since Margaret's death, I wasn't defined by my relationship to someone else. I wasn't Marcus's burden or the widower who can't take care of himself. I was just Rudy Thompson, and that felt wonderful. 3 weeks after my birthday, Marcus called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Dad, it's me," he said, his voice smaller than I'd heard it since he was a teenager. "I've been thinking about what happened at your party. Jessica and we owe you an apology. A big one." "I'm listening," I said, settling into my recliner. "We were selfish, Dad. We weren't thinking about what was best for you. We were thinking about what was easiest for us, and the way we handled it in front of everyone like that was cruel. I'm ashamed of myself." His voice cracked a little, and I felt my anger beginning to soften. He was still my son, Still the little boy I'd taught to tie his shoes and ride a bike. We'd like to come visit you if you'll let us. I want to see where you're living and meet your new friends. And Dad, I want Tommy to see that his grandfather is happy and independent and living his own life. I think that's an important lesson for him to learn. The following Sunday, Marcus, Jessica, and Tommy came for brunch in the community center dining room. I introduced them to my new friends and gave them a full tour of the facilities. Tommy was fascinated by the game room and the pool, and he made fast friends with another resident's visiting granddaughter. Jessica pulled me aside during the visit. Rudy, I owe you a real apology. Working nights and having extra stress at home, I took it out on you, and that wasn't fair. You were never the problem. I was just too proud and too tired to admit that I needed help figuring out how to balance everything. Jessica, I replied, we're family. Families sometimes hurt each other, but they also forgive each other. You're a good woman and a good mother. You just needed to be in your own space, and so did I. Now we both have what we need. Marcus was amazed by the transformation in me. Dad, you look younger somehow, happier. I haven't seen you like this since before Mom got sick. He was right. I felt younger. I felt purposeful. I felt free. That evening, as they were preparing to leave, Tommy hugged me tight around the waist. I like your new house, Grandpa. Can I come swim here sometime? Anytime you want, buddy. And maybe next time you can stay overnight in my guest room. As I watched them drive away, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. 6 months ago, I had been a broken widower living as an unwelcome guest in my son's home. Today, I was a man with his own apartment, his own friends, his own schedule, and the beginning of what might become his own new love story with Sarah. The birthday gift of that nursing home brochure, intended as an ending, had become a beginning. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes you have to lose everything familiar to find everything you never knew you wanted. I learned that respect isn't something you can demand or inherit. It's something you earn by respecting yourself first. I learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely, and being taken care of isn't the same as being loved. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to choose your own life, even if other people don't understand or approve of your choices. The smile I gave my son that day wasn't one of submission or defeat. It was the smile of a man who had taken control of his own destiny. And let me tell you something, there's no feeling in the world quite like the freedom that comes from making your own decisions about your own life. Sometimes the best gift someone can give you is the push you need to save yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, a smile can be the most powerful weapon you've got. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to make decisions about your life without asking what you wanted? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below and share your story. And if this story reminded you that it's never too late to choose your own path, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding strength and independence at any age. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they have more power over their life than they think they do. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your life belongs to you. Don't let anyone else write the ending for you. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort, and always remember that the best chapters of your life might still be waiting to be written.